Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. So today's episode, my guest is Shawn Shewchuk. He's Canadian out west in Canada, and he's a prolific speaker. He's owned businesses. He's an entrepreneur, coach. He dropped some really great nuggets about sales and how sales is really about helping people. We talk about productivity and what that means from a business owner's perspective of like when we want to be more productive, but what actually does that mean? It doesn't mean do more. It means being more productive, being more effective. And we also get into a little bit about initiative. He's putting together a new book that'll be out later this fall. And it's about not waiting for something to happen to us, but going out and making something happen. And so go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. So Shawn, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Last time we talked, you had this beautiful little vista on the side of a road with your bike, and we had a little chat. And we realized this was going to be a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to it ever since then.
Well, I'm glad we got the opportunity to chat and get to know each other a little bit. And yeah, I think we'll have some fun.
So, I don't do a lot of research for these conversations because I like to be curious and get in. But I looked at some of your social media posts and I just like, all right, this guy speaks the same language. He's got a little different Canadian accent than I do, but he's got the same approach. So there's a couple of things I kind of wanted to cover today. I know you got a book that's coming out. Can we talk about that, or is that?
Yeah, go ahead. I won't tell you what it's called yet, but yes.
Okay, so we'll get into that as we go through. But you said we want to talk a little bit about productivity because you had some ideas around how to define that. Mm-hmm. But you have this take on sales where we're very similar in that it's really about helping people. And you brought up the idea of the WKRP. Who was the sales guy? Hal or Harold? Herb, right? Herb. With the blazers and the loud pants. And that's what people think about, that guy, right? That caricature of salespeople. And we both think it's about sales and somehow changing. I run into a lot of these younger, like millennials and Gen Xers who really want to do something important, want to do something bigger than themselves, want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And I think those are great aspirations. And they sort of poo-poo sales because that's not in their vision. And when they do land in the sales seat, I have to try to help them recognize that they're actually helping people, and that community that they're helping expands just wildly gets bigger and bigger if they actually go about helping people. So to tell you the long story, what's your approach? What are your ideas around changing that mindset that sales isn't a dirty word, as you have said a couple of times?
Yeah, sales is not a dirty word. It's something you do with somebody, not to them. But let me build a framework, if I can, around this a little bit. And you referenced, some of the folks, age notwithstanding, I think, in my mind, sales is the highest paid profession in the world, bar none. So I want every single one of you who's watching and listening to this to really absorb that one statement. We talk about, what you're going to go to college and university for and what profession you're going to do. And, there's a lot of parents that encourage their children to become doctors and lawyers and whatever those, and a lot of kids want to become police, fire, whatever and so, here's the key to this. If you are a good salesperson, and I want to be clear about something, there are not very many. If you're a good salesperson, you can write your own paycheck. But excuse me, there seems to be this preconception that sales is virtually impossible. It cannot be done. It's there's no security behind it, and yet it has more security than any other profession in the world, because what you do dictates what it is you make. If you run a business and you're an entrepreneur, you listen. It's not a paycheck every 2 weeks, no matter what it is that happens. You have to go out there and pound the pavement. You have to make things happen. Now, I make it sound a little bit difficult, but it's not really that difficult. And every organization, I want to be very clear about this, because there seems to be, when people get into business for themselves, they take that plunge, they step out of the job, and they go do something incredible. One of the challenges that seems to happen is that we forget that there's sales involved, right? Sales, every organization is a sales organization. I don't care what the product or service is. If you aren't selling, you aren't in business, or at least not for very long. So
Right.
let's get clear on this. If you want to have an impact, in other words, you want to positively impact people's lives, careers, relationship, and businesses, sales is one of the best tools that you can ever hone in order to be able to have the impact you want to have. It's really difficult, and I want you to think about this. It's really difficult to have a positive impact without a positive cash flow. How do you generate that money? It's through sales. Now, I know there's this stigma attached to the word sales, but sales is nothing more than this. And Walter, you and I were chatting about this before we went on the air. Sales is about helping other people see things from a perspective they may not have. So if you want a visual on this, you're sitting on the same side of the table, showing them the view from a perspective that they haven't seen before. And that's the reality of sales. Think about this for a minute. If you can't sell, you're not in business. And those people that say they aren't in sales or don't sell are wrong. And I know that's a brash statement to make, but it's the truth. Because if you're married, and chances are you are, or you have been, or you want to be, or maybe even better yet, you have children, I promise you one thing, you're in sales, much more than you realize every day. And if you're not the one who's selling, you're the one buying. Okay? And I have kids, and I've been very blessed. I've got two sons, one's 6, one's 12. I promise you, they're some of the best negotiators in the world. My 6-year-old, probably the best. Daddy, I want to make you a deal. And
Yep.
what's the deal? He wants more screen time. He wants to go play with his friends when we're at the cabin in the summertime. He doesn't want to come in for dinner. Least of all, wash his hands and face. How about I do this and then I go? And if you start to think about this, everything that happens in your life involves a conversation in sales. And once we accept, so I want you to take a moment right now, open your mind to this idea. If you accept the idea that your life involves sales every day in every aspect of your life, it'll become easier. Your life. So will your business, so will your career, and the relationships. By the way, I'll say this very quickly. Your life's predicated on only two things. One, the relationships you establish, nurture, and build. And number two is the decisions you make. Not in any, that's not necessarily that order, but those are the two things. So the decisions you make, your life, that's everything. And then two is people. Without people, what do you have?
So like that, those two statements, we could spend hours talking about that and how that relates to societal challenges that we probably shouldn't get into. But the premise is that we make decisions and we form relationships, and the relationships that we maintain, the ones that we nurture, all involve some form of sales and conversation around getting something or selling an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this conversation when my daughter was like probably 12, and her and my wife had just had a big argument, and I was sitting adjacent to the room trying to keep my mouth shut, right? And my daughter's doing exactly what you're describing, negotiating, going back and forth and explaining. They got all done, and my wife went outside, and I'm like, look, Mar, if you had just started with, I screwed up, I shouldn't have done that thing, then she can't yell at you anymore. And now you go about solving the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you screwed up, right? She goes, yeah, okay. So if once you own it and you say it, then we can't yell at you.
Mm-hmm.
All we can do is try to figure out, how do we avoid this happening in the future? What can we do? Why did it happen? But we're done yelling. Now it's about helping. And she took that to heart, and she reminded me of that a couple of weeks ago. That she's used that in different relationships that you have. So, I mean, it's a great point about selling the relationships and our decisions. And I think, like I said, we could talk about that for hours. But I want to move to you have an idea around productivity in a business, and we hear about productivity and creating efficiencies and creating effectiveness, and most people don't understand the differences there. But can you speak to how you help an entrepreneur, help that business owner understand what goes into productivity and improving upon it?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'll start, I guess, answering it in this way. For probably 2 or 3 generations, we have been told and taught that we need to improve productivity. And it comes from upper management. If you work in a large organization, right from the top down, they say, hey, you got to improve in productivity in your department, your division, your whatever it is. And here's the interesting part: if I ask most of those leaders to define productivity, they just tell me more. But here's the reality: you can't just say give me more. And I don't care who the person is. If you just say give me more, they don't know what that means. So productivity is defined as any action step or activity that moves you in the direction of the objective, the goal, whatever that is. And when you understand this, then you can start to shift, and you start to coach people, whether it's a team or an individual, if I'm working with a leader, onto what that looks like. And when we get clear on what the role is, so let's say I'm a leader in the company, I shouldn't be engaged in minimum wage tasks because I become non-productive. So if you're doing something that's non-productive, in other words, you're not doing what it is you're supposed to be doing within your organization. So if it's my company, should I be cleaning the waste paper baskets or the bathrooms? And the answer of reality is no. Does that mean I'm better than someone who is? No. It means I'm leveraging my time. Listen, the only non-renewable resource, we've all heard this, is time. You only get so much of it. I don't care who you are. I don't care how healthy or unhealthy you are. You only get so much time. I want to leverage my time in a way where I am producing the best results possible. Why? Because that affords me the ability to scale my business. It affords me the ability to spend time with my family. It affords me the ability to travel and do those things that I think are important and a priority for me. Now, your priorities may be slightly different. You may not want to travel. You may want to, I don't know, take your family and go on a trip somewhere to the mountains. Okay. Now, I'll give you an example. I have a summer place in the Rockies. And pretty much every weekend between May and October, we're there. Why? Because to me, it's a priority. It's where I want my children to spend time and create memories. That's an important thing to me. Now, yours may be different, and you may be at a different stage in your journey of life. But the reality of this, productivity is something that every person, we can help them change it. And if you think of this, the average person today in North America is only productive 4 out of 24 hours. There's lots of room for improvement. So when we talk to leaders, we say, listen, what if we work together? And they say, well, what can you do? Well, what if we were able to just get 1 extra hour out of each one of your team members on that high productivity side of the scale? And they're like, yeah, well, how does that translate? Think about what that means at the end of the fiscal year to the bottom line. If only 1 hour for each person. Now, I had somebody, and I'll share this very interesting with you. I had somebody phone me, and apparently they're writing a book. This was just this past week. And they said, I can't make any progress. It just isn't happening. And I said, well, why not? I am so busy. And so I asked this question. It may seem obvious. I said, what are you busy doing? And the phone went quiet.
Humana, humana, humana.
They're doing things to stay busy. Listen, I can go sit at the reception desk in my office and look busy. Doesn't mean I'm actually doing anything productive that I should be doing. Okay. And this is why when we talk about scaling, we need people. Now, there are people say to me, I have a small business, Shawn, and I can't hire a full-time accountant and pay them, what their annual salary should be. You don't have to. You know what? I have run 44 different companies over the past almost 30 years. And when they're small, we have someone that comes in and does accounting and data entry, payables, receivables, once a week for about 4 hours. That's it. And they get paid every month for their 16 hours-ish a month. And I don't have to pay a salary where they're here all the time. Why? Because I don't need it. Do I need an assistant? Yes, full-time. Why? Because if I have an assistant that I'm engaged in the things that I need to be doing, and he or she is managing my calendar, is taking phone calls, booking appointments, whatever those things are. And if you think about this, I was on a stage, and I'll share this very quickly with you. I think this is interesting because it tells a lot about mindset. I was on a stage in Reno, Nevada, 5 or 6 years ago, and one of the questions somebody asked me in the Q&A after I spoke was around this, and I said, "Well, I don't mow my own lawn. I grew up on a farm. I know how to use a lawnmower. I can mow my lawn, but I don't mow my own lawn." And then another person came up and asked a question. I said, "Well, I don't clean my home. I have someone to help me with that as well." And this very elderly woman who's well into her 80s got up to the microphone. She says, "So you think you're better than I am?" I said, "I didn't say that." Okay. What I said was I leveraged my time. She says, "Well, I really wish." And so, the audience now is very much listening to her. And this is kind of a funny point. So she's kind of giving me a hard time that I think I'm better than she is because I don't mow my lawn or clean my house. And I said to her, I said, "Well, I said, my time is very valuable. And if I'm investing time into my home, I could be doing it helping other people who need the expertise that I'm very fortunate to have." And she said, "I really wish someone would have come along and swept me off my feet like you and married me so I didn't have to do this stuff." And the audience right now, you could have heard a pin drop. And there's, 1,700 people in this room. And so I was on 4-foot stage, and I got down on one knee and invited her to come on stage as if I was going to propose. The audience laughed, and it was funny. It diffused the moment because, it was one of those moments where everybody wants to see how the guy on stage is going to react.
Right. It's a test.
But here's the key behind all of this. You have every single person right now watching, listening, even those that aren't, has an opportunity to make a shift and a change. And it's based, remember we talked about a little bit earlier, we talked about the decisions you make. If you make a decision to become better at what you do, like this person who phoned me with a book, I said, every day, take 1 hour, block it in your calendar as if you're meeting with the president, and never, ever, ever break that appointment. Turn your phone off, leave it in a different room. I don't care what you do. Take that 1 hour and write for 1 hour a day, and you'll be done in 6 weeks. I can't. I said, why not? Oh, because I have things to do. I said, no. This is the thing. Because your publisher is going to come looking in September for a completed manuscript. They already gave you in advance. You have a contractual obligation, which you can't break unless you want to end up in court. Right? And this individual's like, "Yeah, you're right." And so what they've hired our company to do, and one of our people will be working with them, is to literally hold them to account. Where are you today in relation to you were 5 days ago? Have you invested 5 hours? Now, does everyone need that? No, but a lot of us do.
But but that principle can be applied to salespeople about business development time, about the little bit of research they might be able to do, the proposals that they need to write. If they just manage their time in a productive fashion, and it doesn't take, to write a book. I've carved out 45 minutes once a day for 6 days a week, and I finished a book in 6 weeks. And, I had somebody helping me, kind of clean up the spelling and the grammatical stuff, but I put the words on the paper because of exactly what you just said. You prioritize that one thing that's going to make and move the needle. And there's always
we have a client, Walter, out of Toronto. And he was invited to speak at an event, but the prerequisite to speaking at the event is that he had a published book. So what some people don't know is I also own a company called Results Press, and we work in this area, nonfiction, business, real estate, personal development, etc., and publish those books. And no, don't get me wrong, we helped him every step of the way, but it took him 1 week, right? There was a big investment of time, energy, effort, money, but he put out 50,000 words, edited, and published. And then we had to go to a printer. There's one printer in North America that can turn around copies on a 48-hour notice. Now, they aren't cheap, but he needed books to show up at the event. And so in 1 week, the book was out. I submitted it to our team submitted it to a printer in the U.S., in Tennessee. And he had boxes of books drop shipped from the printer right to the event inside of a 2-week window. So listen to me. I'm not saying you have to write a 50,000 word book in a week, but what I am getting at is if you actually dedicate the time to those high leverage activities, you'll get there. If you're engaged in activities that are not high leverage, we call them HLAs when I work with people. Those high leverage activities are going to move the needle. If you're engaged in things that are non-productive or not high leverage, oh my gosh, stop doing them.
So I'm reworking and bringing on a full time assistant, and going through the process to prepare for that. Um, the first exercise is to go figure out what your time's worth, right? Which I already knew, but when I've had that conversation with a business owner, you go through the math and you get them there, and they're like, yeah, I get it. My time's worth $1,200 an hour. I understand, but you see, you don't understand, Walter, right? But you don't understand this, and it's like they can't get past that. They're the only ones who they think they're the only ones who can do certain things. They're the only ones who can get this accomplished. It's all up here, right? So it's getting that mindset shift of just doing a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and then by the end of the year, end of the quarter, you've made progress along the way. If you've created the discipline to, and that discipline creates your freedom by putting those constraints on yourself that gives you all of that space. But they have so much trouble realizing that what they really want is freedom, and to be able to do the things that they want to be able to do outside of their business, that they got to let some of that go, and that's a struggle. So
Freedom
just
is
do a
defined
little
in
bit
three
each
ways.
time.
The
There you
ability
go.
to do what you want, when you want, and with whom encompasses everything. And once we get clear on what that actually means and to us individually and how it applies, we actually can change outcomes, and you can do it overnight. I've watched people inside of a 12-month period uh, grow a company from concept to over 7 figures because they set their mind to it. And it really comes down to, Bob Proctor used to say, making an irrevocable decision. A lot of people
Mm.
make decisions, but that doesn't mean you stick to it. So if you're serious about the outcomes you want, and you got to get clear, clarity, focus, execution, know where you're going, right? Clarity of destination, focus to the exclusion of all outside distractions, and never mind action. Action is neither here nor there. It's execution of those predetermined steps. When you understand that, then you can make anything happen.
And we have the capacity. It's just that I think it's that those first two steps are the part that they don't get enough leverage on themselves to be able to do it, right? That that pain or that fear of not getting to what they really want to do.
It's true.
Um, and if you just take the little thing that gets you to the next thing. I needed to start working out last year, and I all I wanted to do was get up and walk at 5:30 in the morning, right? So what did I do? I made it simple so that all I had to do is go grab what was already out and ready for me to go get changed and go walk, right? I didn't have to think. I just had to get up, and now I get out of bed without. It's not even an option. I'm out
Yeah,
of bed.
you eliminate those things that are stumbling blocks or that hold you back, and it's just like the sales process, right? Part of the
100%.
sales process. You and I were talking about this, prior to going live. Uh, if a sale doesn't close, and I know some people don't like the word close either, but if a sale doesn't close, it's not usually because of the close or when you asked for the sale, which hopefully you did. It's about something that either did or did not happen in the process or conversation prior to that. And I want to be clear about something. This is a really interesting point I'm going to make, and most people don't like this. The sale doesn't start until the first no. Until then, it's only a conversation. Because your job as a salesperson is to help someone come to the conclusion that is going to help and assist them in achieving the outcomes they need, want, desire, and ultimately deserve. But you see, we're skeptics because we don't want to accept that someone can help us. That's a human nature thing, maybe even partially societal norms, right?
Hey, thanks for being part of the Sales and Cigar community. I wanted to share that I wrote a book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization. The CEOs who've read it tell me I cut to the chase quickly, get to the point, explain exactly what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, and how to fix it. So if you want a free copy, go check out the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview. The skepticism should be on both sides, right? I get really nervous when I'm talking to somebody and they're excited through the discovery process. And it's like, oh, crap. this isn't going to work out, right? Is what
Well,
I'm thinking.
I don't mind excitement. When I have a conversation that ends up being a sales conversation, and I never have to sell the person. That means I sit down, shake their hand, they say I'm in. Where do I sign? Because that will end up being a challenging relationship 9 times out of 10.
100%, 100%. So I mean, I use those. I just ask a lot of questions like that, trying for them to start to explain to me why this is going to work, and like if you've done that before, and why. I mean, there's a lot of why. Um, but so that skepticism needs to be on both sides of the equation here to make sure we got it fit, because you don't you can't move forward with helping somebody until you're clear about what that helping involves, what we're trying to move forward with.
Yeah, I'll share a quick story on this. Listen, you have to ask somebody if you're in a sales process and they want to buy and you want to sell. You have to be able to ask the right questions. And many years ago, and I say many, I mean about 10, I was asked by an auto group. It's a company that owns, probably about 80 or 90 car dealerships, all different brands, GM and Ford and Nissan and all the different ones. And they wanted me to come in and do some work with some of their folks on the sales side of things. And I don't do a whole lot of this anymore, but at the time I took the opportunity to do that. And I went into a very large store. And there's a few salespeople who they think they're God and fell from heaven, and they can close deals like no one else. But they were under the misconception that you have to have all kinds of product knowledge. Having product knowledge on what you sell is important, but it's got nothing to do with the sale. It is everything to do with somebody may comes in and wants a laundry list of what the car, truck will or will not do. So what I did with these guys is on a Saturday morning, which is typically the busiest day of the year, I told them I was going to have some fun that day. And I put on a suit and I went on the sales floor. And I sold 5 cars.
And you don't know buckets about the car.
I know nothing about the cars. Yeah, I know how to drive a car, and yeah, I like cars. I'm a car guy, but I know nothing about the cars. Like I don't work for Chrysler. But what I did it all at list price. We didn't give 1 red cent off.
And they paid attention to you afterwards?
They did, 100%. And I had a guy saying, "Well, I think you must have done things that were untoward and illegal and unethical and all that." And what it came down to was very simply this: I made a decision that morning, long before I got to the dealership, long before I put on a suit and tie, long before I had a conversation in their sales meeting of what I was going to do. And I was very strategic in every single conversation. And for those who are in those types of sales, every up that I took on that sales floor. Because at the end of the day, you have to understand something. There are people who are going to walk through a door, if it's retail, of any location to kick tires. And statistically, it's the third location, the third store they walk into is where they're going to buy. Okay? So if they're there on the third time, you're almost guaranteed a deal. Now, keep in mind, buying cars is a tough one because most people don't walk around with that kind of money in their pocket. Right? They have to be financed. So the reality you have to understand is who you talk to determines this. When I was back in college and university, I worked for an electronics, home theater, TVs, all this stuff. This is many, many, many years ago, before Best Buy owned the marketplace. But I was only there 3 years, and I never took ups on the floor. I just didn't take ups. And they couldn't, like the salespeople, the management knew, but the salespeople couldn't understand why I could sit in one of the offices and still be number 1 and number 2 every month.
They just never picked it up.
All relationships. There were families that would come in and they'd bring their children and their aunts and their uncles. Why? Because of the level of service. One of the wealthiest real estate gurus in the city I lived in at the time, him and his wife owned more commercial property. They bought land outside of the city and held it until it was part of the city and then built commercial condos. And they would walk into my store and they would say, "I want to buy X. Will you deliver it, Shawn?" I'd say yes. And eventually got to the place where they never came in the store. They phoned me and said, "Hi, Shawn, do you have a this?" And I said, "Yes." They said, "Perfect. Here's my credit card number. Can you deliver it?" Yes. Right? Did I get paid to go and deliver the television? No. Did I get paid to set up a home theater? No. Not in an hourly rate. But everything. But of course it did. Over and over and over. And you know something? What's interesting is I used to put this is funny, those who are my age and older will remember pagers before cell phones were a thing. On my business card, I had a pager number. It was mine. And if somebody phoned me and said, are you there, or texted or, paged me, I would respond and I would go to the store and sell. Now, not for $200 deal, but you know what I mean?
Sure.
Weekends, I would set a target for myself, not what the management set, what I set. So here's what I'm going to sell today. And I would say that. And everybody thought I was cocky until the end of the day because the traffic's there. And when salespeople say, well, people aren't buying, that's baloney. And for those of you salespeople watching and listening to this,
You're
your
making them
sales
mad.
manager knows if he or she is worth their salt. Your sales manager knows that there's business walking out the door. And what I used to do when I would go into another store inside the company chain where the salespeople didn't know me, on a Saturday, I would stand at the door and I would grab people as they were leaving, turn them around, and tell them I was the floor sales manager, and I would close their deals.
Making friends. That's
Hey,
awesome.
you know something? At the end of the day, there's a reason why they didn't buy,
Yeah.
and it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with the product.
No, it was always the salesperson's words or lack of words or lack of compassion, lack of empathy, lack of good questions, something.
I had for those of you, I don't know if you know what an OHV or an ATV is. So it's a side by side made by Polaris, and it's got two seats, and you go riding in the mountains or whatever. And so, I have a place in the Rockies, and I had one of those for 2 years. We weren't using it, and I listed it on, I don't know, Facebook something or other, or I don't know, one of the other classified websites. And I had a guy come and see it. Had a couple actually, but the one guy came to see it. I knew he was going to buy it before he even opened his mouth. He drove 3 hours to buy it. He's already committed. And he offered me $5,000 under what I was asking, and the thing only had 570 kilometers. For those of you that know Canada's on a different
Low miles.
system. It was a very low mile vehicle, and he wanted to give me less money, and I said no. I'm sorry. This is the value of the vehicle, right? And he was hemming and hawing, and I said, let's go for a ride. And we hopped in just for 5 minutes, and we got to wherever, on some gravel road, and I handed him the key and said, you drive. And I got on the other side. And he came back, he parked it, and he said, you only live once, let's do it. What sold him? The fact that when he pushed that accelerator, that thing up and took off. That was it. Yeah, it was clean, and it was in good shape, and mileage was good. But he went, the Tim the Toolman Taylor raw thing, and that sold it. Understand who your audience is. Understand who you're selling to.
Yeah, but that requires people to listen and pay attention, right? And you reference there's not very many good salespeople out there, and our statistics show that there's 6% of all the salespeople on the planet are elite, right? And then there's another 14-15% that are above average.
When I advertise for salespeople in my business, you know what I ask, or what I put out on the advertisement? That it's the hardest sales position you will ever do. Why? It's
Honest.
sales. Because guess what? You're selling an intangible in my world. You can't sell an intangible like you sell or buy or whatever, a phone or a laptop. And so it is one of the toughest sales.
So we call that a Shackelford style ad. That's the kind of ads that we write, where we're describing the person we're looking for, and we're giving them an honest depiction of what's going to happen, and what they're up against. And the ones that are up for the challenge lean into it and are interested. We repel the ones that we don't want.
And it's still sales, because you're pre-qualifying the people that come to the door that may want to work with you.
It starts with the ad, and then throughout the whole hiring process, it's always about qualifying and disqualifying the candidate. We don't sell the role or the job until we're ready to make somebody an offer.
And it's interesting. We have I'll share this with you. We have a new program that hasn't been launched yet, and it's directed at people that either are or want to be coaches, and actually helping them to become that coach that can actually make a living, have an impact, and even scale their business out. And it's interesting. We have a waiting list, and this thing hasn't launched, but I've talked about it a couple times. There's a waiting list of well over 20 people who want to have a conversation with us about it. And when you start to understand what sales is, then this type of a scenario becomes so much easier. And I want to share this. This program will generate, when people understand how to sell coaching. If you sell coaching, you're just like every other donkey out there that put a website up and said, I'm a coach.
I love the analogy. So let me ask you this question, because we're running a little longer than my producer's going to yell at me. But you've got a book. I know you're not going to tell us the title, but can you talk a little bit about what people should be looking for, or when that might pop out? Because I think you've got people's attention.
Well, first of all, you can go. There's a couple books. There's Change Your Mind, Change Your Results, which was a bestseller when it came out, going back a few years. There's one that came out about a year and a half ago um, called Daily Motivation, and it really is a book with 366 pages, and every day is something different. Kind of a devotional style book. And then I also put together something called the Planner. Here, it's called Your Freedom Planner. This actually took about 2 years to put together. And it really is about, we've been talking about productivity and achievement, and at some level, that's what it's all around. We talked about HLAs, high leverage activities, and each page is set out that way. And then at the end of the day, you revisit it to exactly what it is you accomplished or deferred or, downloaded, delegated, automated, all these kinds of different things. But there is a book coming out in September, and it's all around initiative, the difference between waiting for orders and taking initiative. And so many people are waiting for something to happen rather than doing something about it. Listen to me. I had someone, I shared this, Walter, with you earlier. I had someone say to me they were born in the U.S. and therefore entitled to the American dream. I want to share something, folks. You're not entitled to anything. The American dream works if you do. And so going out there and making something happen will unquestionably change the outcomes and your fortunes. And listen, so many people need help today, no matter what it is. I don't care if you install windows in houses. I don't care if you drive a taxi or you decide you want to help people grow their businesses. Everybody needs something, and everybody is looking for someone to follow. But unless you're effective from a sales perspective, in other words, being able to converse and convey a message and show people how they benefit from working together with you, you won't succeed. So the point in all this is you have to be able, and someone asked me this question, Shawn, why are you always on? And what they meant was, I always have, I think on my feet, right? If you're able to give someone an answer based upon a question without having to go and find the answer, become good at this, especially in the space that you're the expert in.
Well, if you're an expert in a space, you should be able to have a conversation and not be stumped.
Hopefully.
And be, yeah, well, but again, 6%, that's sort of the number, right? It's a real thing. And I think from a salespeople taking initiative, we're redoing our kitchen and we're spending stupid amount of money. And we looked at 3, or my wife looked at 5. She asked me to talk to 3 of the contractors that were going to do the design work. And it's a long story, but I'll get short. The 2 that we didn't hire, I called the CEOs. And I'm like, you lost a $225,000 sale, and let me tell you why. Your person who we talked to didn't ask me one freaking question. They told me what they thought. They told me what they liked. They told me what I should do, but they didn't ask us, what do they like about your current kitchen? What don't you like about it? If you had to do it again, what might you do? Why would that be important? What's your lifestyle like? Do you do a lot of entertaining, right? I'm not in the business, but I could go sell a kitchen, I think, based on what I saw. And, he was like, each one of these guys they leaned into the conversation, like, well, can you help? And I'm like, I don't really help retail type situations, but just ask them to ask 4 questions. What, why? Teach them that. And you'll stop
How can
losing.
you sell anything to anybody if you don't know what they want?
These people didn't sell anything.
And then 2, if you think about this, if you don't know what they want, how do you sell them? And then 2, if you're going to tell them what they want, you're not going to sell them, right?
It's about listening. It's about asking really good questions. It's asking enough questions. It's asking tough questions, and being somewhat skeptical, but with a goal and intent of trying to discern whether you can help them or not. And if you can help them, then for God's sakes, help them.
The quality of the questions always determines the quality of the answers. I know that may seem simplistic, and it is simple.
Because it is simple.
That's right. We tend to overcomplicate things. Human nature is we tend to overcomplicate things. Asking 4 or 5 questions at the outset determines 1, what they want, and 2, if you can help them. And if ethically you can help them and they're willing to pay you for that help, sell.
And if they're not, and there's some reason to disqualify, then tell them that too. And help them out by letting them move on, and help yourself out by not wasting time.
Exactly.
So last question I have, Shawn, Past or present, a relationship with cigars?
Say that again.
Past or present, does Shawn have a relationship with cigars?
Yes.
Can you share?
Past.
Past. All right. I'm looking for a story. I'm looking for something that maybe you don't partake in the leaf anymore. But is that something that you
Believe.
got a good story there?
Yeah. Well, I'll share this very, very.
Make me
So
look.
yeah, yes, I used to. And because I live in Canada, not the United States, and there's no embargo between Canada and Cuba, I have, and it's probably been a decade or more since I've been down to Cuba, but I used to go to Cuba fairly regularly and probably once a year. And I used to bring back, Cuban cigars. So, yeah, I honestly, I loved every cigar I ever had, but I made a decision at one point in time in my life that I didn't want to do it anymore. And that's not an indication to anyone else who does or doesn't.
But it's
Uh,
like what you said before. We all make choices, and we make the right choices for us for the right reasons.
yeah.
And
And there was no
just
real reason. I just made a decision. It was a point in time, and it wasn't that I felt it was or wasn't the right or wrong thing to do. It was just what I wanted to do at that point in time in my life. And yeah, I still have sitting somewhere in a closet two very expensive humidors.
hopefully you're taking care of them, seasoning them or something. But um, I appreciate the insights, all the things that you shared. Anticipate the books. If somebody hurts you say something that really intrigued them, they want to get a hold of Shawn. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Change your results. I remember on social media, but changeyourresults.com. And everything's there. You can take a look at the story. You can read about us speaking, whatever the coaching, the things we do. Everything's there.
Good. All right, we'll have all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you doing this, and best of luck.
Thank you to you.
Hey, thank you for being part of the Sales and Cigars community. I want to take a quick second to share that I'm doing a free sales hiring challenge this month. I'm going to give you everything you need to hire sales superstars and avoid the sales duds. Check out the link in the show notes to be able to sign up for free.